The envelope sat on the table between them. Dr. Phil's hand froze mid-gesture. The woman across from him, Linda, stared at the sealed manila folder as if it contained a bomb. Her fingers trembled. The studio audience, 2,000 people who had seen every kind of human drama unfold on this stage, went completely silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle, just the hum of the cameras and the weight of what was about to happen. Dr. Phil leaned forward. His voice dropped to that tone everyone who's ever watched the show recognizes, the one that says, "We're not playing games anymore." "Linda," he said, "before you open that, I need you to understand something. What's inside this envelope is going to change everything you thought you knew. Are you ready?" She nodded, but her hands didn't move toward the envelope. They gripped the armrests of her chair like she was bracing for impact. Dr. Phil looked directly into the camera. "Not at Linda, at you at home. What you're about to see," he said, "is why I do this show. Because sometimes the truth isn't just painful, it's necessary." He reached across and slid the envelope closer to her. And that's when everything changed. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to 3 months earlier when Linda first walked through those studio doors thinking she was coming to talk about grief. She had no idea what she was actually about to discover. Linda Morrison had been married to James for 32 years of breakfast together, of vacations to the same lake house every summer, of raising 2 daughters who both looked exactly like him. He was a sales manager, traveled for work, nothing unusual, nothing that raised red flags. He died suddenly of a heart attack in a hotel room in Cleveland. She got the call at 2:00 a.m. The hotel manager said he was alone. The police report confirmed it. Natural causes. Tragic, but clean. She grieved the way you're supposed to grieve. She cleaned out his closet. She organized his file. She started going through his phone. Not because she suspected anything, but because it felt like holding on to him a little longer, reading old text messages, looking at photos, the digital breadcrumbs of a life lived together. That's when she saw it. A message thread she didn't recognize from someone named M. The messages were brief. Monday, even dinner at 7. Don't forget, Sarah's recital. Love you, Sarah. They didn't have a daughter named Sarah. They had Emily and Rachel. Who was Sarah? Linda told herself it was a coworker, a client, someone from his sales territory. But the messages kept going back years, 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, and then she found the photos. James with a woman she'd never seen. James with a little girl who had his eyes. James at birthday parties, at Christmas mornings, at moments that looked exactly like the life she thought she had with him. That's when she called Dr. Phil's producers. Not because she wanted to be on TV, because she didn't know what else to do. She needed someone to tell her she wasn't losing her mind. She needed someone to help her understand what she was looking at. The producers did something they rarely do. They investigated quietly, thoroughly. They hired a private investigator. They tracked down property records, phone bills, credit card statements. They found the second house, the one 43 Mother Way, the one registered under a slightly different name, James Morrison. One or instead of two. They found the bank accounts, the separate finances, the entire parallel existence, and they found Margaret and Sarah, the second wife, the second daughter, the second life. Margaret had no idea Linda existed. Sarah had no idea. Emily and Rachel existed. James had managed to keep 2 complete families running for 17 years. 2 sets of holidays, 2 sets of anniversaries, 2 women who both thought they were the only one. Dr. Phil had seen a lot in his decades on television. But this was different because Linda didn't just lose her husband. She lost her entire history. Every memory she had was now contaminated with the question, which version of him was real? The day of the taping, Linda walked onto that stage, thinking she was going to talk about complicated grief, about losing someone, and then discovering they weren't who you thought they were. She knew about Margaret. She knew about Sarah. The producers had told her. What she didn't know, what no one had told her yet, was what was in the envelope. Dr. Phil started the interview the way he always does. "Tell me why you're here." Linda took a breath and began. She talked about the marriage, about finding the messages, about the shock of discovering her husband had another family. The audience gasped in the right places. They shook their heads. Some of them cried. And then Dr. Phil did something that caught everyone off guard. He stopped her mid-sentence. "Linda," he said, "hold on. Just hold on." He stood up, walked off the stage. The cameras kept rolling, but you could see the confusion on Linda's face. The audience murmured. One of the producers came over and whispered something to her. She nodded, but her expression said she had no idea what was happening. Dr. Phil came back 30 seconds later. He was holding the envelope. He didn't sit back down. He stood in front of Linda and said, "Before we go any further, there's something you need to see. Something we found during our investigation that changes everything." Linda's face went pale. "What is it?" "Financial records," Dr. Phil said. "From James's accounts. Both sets of accounts. The ones you knew about, and the ones you didn't." He placed the envelope on the table. "When my team started digging into how James managed to fund two separate households, two separate lives, we found something. And Linda, I need you to brace yourself, because this is going to be hard." She looked at the envelope, like it was a live grenade. "What did you find?" Dr. Phil sat back down. He didn't open the envelope. "Not yet. James wasn't just living a double life. He said he was funding it with money that should have been yours, your joint savings, your retirement, money from your daughter's college funds. He drained nearly everything." The audience made a collective sound, a gasp, mixed with anger. Linda's hands went to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No. That's not possible. I checked the accounts. They were fine. They looked fine," Phil said, "because he was falsifying statements, showing you one set of numbers, while the real accounts showed something very different. Linda, you have about $8,000 left total from accounts that should have had over 4. The camera zoomed in on her face. You could see the exact moment it hit her. The exact second when shock turned to devastation. "My daughters," she said, "their college money gone." Dr. Phil said, "Used to buy the second house to pay for Sarah's private school, to maintain the life he built with Margaret." Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Linda's hands started shaking. Not a subtle tremor, a full body shake that made the microphone clip to her collar rattle. Dr. Phil reached over and steadied her arm. "Breathe." Just breathe." She tried, but the breathing turned into sobbing. Deep guttural sobs that came from somewhere primal. The kind of crying that happens when your entire foundation collapses. 32 years, she choked out. 32 years. And all of it was a lie. Dr. Phil didn't try to stop her from crying. He didn't offer platitudes. He just sat there present, letting her feel it. The audience was crying too. Some of them were openly weeping. One woman in the front row had her hand over her heart, like she was trying to hold herself together. After a minute, Dr. Phil spoke. "Linda, I want you to open the envelope. Now. Because there's something else, something we found in the last 72 hours, that you need to see." She looked at him with red, swollen eyes. What else could there possibly be? He slid the envelope directly in front of her. "Open it." Her hands were still shaking, but she reached for it, pulled out the papers inside. The first page was a bank statement. She stared at it, trying to make sense of the numbers. "I don't understand," she said. This is Margaret's account." "Keep reading," Dr. Phil said. She flipped through the pages. Bank statements, credit card bills, and then at the bottom of the stack, something else, a letter, handwritten, online notebook paper, like something a teenager would write. Linda pulled it out, started reading, and then she stopped. Her face went white. "What is it?" Someone in the audience called out. "What does it say?" Linda's voice was barely a whisper. "It's from James to Margaret, dated 2 weeks before he died." She looked up at Dr. Phil. He was planning to leave her to end it. "To," her voice broke, "to come clean to me. To fix it." The studio went silent. Not the kind of silence that comes from shock, the kind that comes from grief. Because this wasn't just a revelation, it was a tragedy. James had died before he could make it right, before he could confess, before he could ask for forgiveness. And now Linda was left holding the wreckage of 2 lives, with no way to put them back together. Dr. Phil leaned forward. "Linda, what James did was wrong, unforgivable. But I need you to hear something. You are not responsible for his choices. You are not the one who lied. You are not the one who stole from your family. You are the victim here. Do you understand that?" She nodded, but her face said she didn't believe it. "Not yet. I've arranged for you to meet with a financial attorney." Dr. Phil continued. "Someone who specializes in cases like this. We're going to explore every legal option to recover what was taken from you. And I've also set up sessions with a therapist who works specifically with betrayal trauma. Because Linda, you didn't just lose your husband, you lost your sense of reality. And that is something we need to address. She was still holding the letter. Do you think he meant it? She asked. Do you think he really was going to tell me? Dr. Phil didn't answer right away. He looked at the letter, at Linda, at the camera. I think James was a man who made terrible choices, and I think at the end he realized what he'd done. But intentions don't erase damage. What matters now is what you do next. How you rebuild. How you take back your life. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. This is the attorney. Call her tomorrow. Don't wait. He placed it on the table next to the envelope. And this, he said, pulling out a small folded piece of paper, is something I want you to keep. Read it when you get home, when you're alone, when the weight of all this feels like too much. Linda took the paper. What is it? A reminder, Phil said, that you are stronger than this, that you will survive this, and that 32 years of your life were not a lie. They were your truth. James lied. Not you. The audience erupted in applause, not the polite clapping of a TV audience. Real applause, the kind that says, we see you, we believe you, we are with you. Dr. Phil stood up, walked over to Linda, and did something he rarely does on camera. He hugged her. Not a quick staged hug, a long genuine embrace that said you are not alone. When he pulled back, he looked directly at the camera again. If you're watching this and you're going through something similar, if you've discovered betrayal, if you've had your reality shattered, I want you to know that healing is possible. It's not easy, it's not fast, but it is possible. He gestured to Linda. This woman right here is proof that you can survive the unimaginable. And if she can do it, so can you. He turned back to Linda. You came here looking for answers, and what we found is that sometimes the answers are worse than the questions. But you know what? You're still standing. You're still here, and that matters. Linda wiped her eyes with a tissue. Thank you, she said. I don't know what I would have done without this. Without you, you would have figured it out, Dr. Phil said. Because that's who you are. But I'm glad we could be here to help. The cameras cut away for a commercial break, but the audience stayed silent. Some of them were still crying. Others were just sitting there, processing what they'd witnessed. Because this wasn't entertainment. This was real life. Real pain. Real survival. When the cameras came back, Dr. Phil had one more thing to say. Before we end, I want to bring someone out. Someone Linda hasn't met yet, but who needs to be part of this conversation. Linda's eyes went wide. Who? Margaret? Dr. Phil said. James's other wife. She's backstage, and she wants to talk to you. The audience gasped. Linda's face went through a dozen emotions. In 3 seconds, I don't know if I can do that, she said. You don't have to, Dr. Phil said. But I think you should, because she's grieving too, and she's just as much a victim of James's lies as you are. Linda took a deep breath, nodded. Okay, bring her out. Margaret walked onto the stage. She was younger than Linda, maybe early 40s. She looked terrified. When she saw Linda, she stopped. I'm so sorry, she said. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Linda stood up. The two women stared at each other. And then, in a moment that no one expected, Linda reached out and took Margaret's hand. No words, just two women who had loved the same man, grieved the same loss, and survived the same lie. The audience rose to their feet. Dr. Phil stepped back, letting the moment speak for itself. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from knowing you're not alone. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. Dr. Phil walked off stage that day knowing he'd witnessed something rare. Two victims who refused to be enemies. Two families destroyed by one man's choices. And a reminder that truth, no matter how painful, is always better than living in a lie. The envelope still sits on Linda's kitchen table, a reminder of what she lost and what she survived, and every time she looks at it, she remembers Phil's words, you are stronger than this, and she is.